Hello, and welcome back to episode 99 of the Guardian Project podcast. I'm your host, Andy and Coyle. Do you know what Willy Wonka's favorite spell is from Strixhaven?
No, I do not.
It's divide by zero. You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
Now, we all you Quandrix members out there that just are starting to go crazy because Andy just said divide by zero. I'm sorry. We have to reduce that equation down. We have to get those variables out of that. I understand.
You get nothing. You get nothing.
And I'm your other host, Mike. And breaking news: Wizards is releasing a brand new movie featuring Astral Cornucopia and Crackling Power. But you're gonna have to be 18 to get in and see it because it's rated XXX.
Oh.
Please listen carefully.
Oh, gosh. And this is the podcast where we talk about all things Magic the Gathering.
But mostly Commander.
So,
yeah, if you were wondering, that wasn't real news. Sorry.
Not breaking news. So this past week, I got to play 12 games of Commander, and I will reiterate, I am not playing 365 games this year.
I mean, you might just accidentally.
I don't think I think I'm pretty far behind. I think I'm at 104, 105 now, and I'm pretty sure that being into March, I'm behind.
Meanwhile, we're looking at okay, if your second vaccine's on this day, then 14 days after, okay, then we'll have 8 people. We could draft Commander Legends then. We could play 12 games of Commander after that.
Yes, update. Yes, vaccination updates. I am fully vaccinated. It was a rough 27 hours, 27, 28-ish hours from the minute that I got my vaccination till feeling fine again. I did not get a fever, but I had all the chills.
Yes, and if you're listening to this as it premieres, then I probably will be at home with said chills.
Yes, so. Coyle, you are getting yours later this week, but right. Then 2 weeks from that, mark your calendar because we're drafted.
That's right, finally.
Get in, loser. We're going drafted.
Yeah. All right. Well, there were some news things also that happened this last week. Wizards of the Coast released their official Strixhaven School of Mages survey. So I know, Andy, you always take your time to fill this out.
I do, and the link to that will actually be in our show notes below. So the survey itself, it's pretty lengthy. I'll be honest, it's not a quick survey. They ask you a lot of questions, but they really want to know what we think, right, to make the product better. Mm-hmm. So there were a lot of questions about what products you buy, why you buy them, if you like the set specifically, what about the set you liked, what you didn't like. But I believe. One of my favorite parts was they asked about the quality of the product, and it's much better. Mm-hmm. I think this set, I can confirm. I'm looking at 2 cards in my hand right now. They're both foils, and neither of them are warping at all.
That's right, and we actually have a lot of humidity where we are right now too. So if it was going to warp, they should have been warping. So yeah,
they should have been warping. So I'm looking at a foil Culling Ritual and a foil Strixhaven Stadium, and they are flat as can be, and that makes me really happy. Yeah. So make sure to go take that survey if you want them to hear your feedback. There are a lot of questions where you can actually type out some additional information, so let them know. There was also the first episode of the Great Strixhaven College Clash was out. So there is a 3-part miniseries that started on April 29th with narrator Sue Perkins. Many of you may know Sue Perkins actually as one of the hosts from the first few seasons of the Great British Baking Show. So they are celebrating the Strixhaven set release with an entertaining comedy-driven competition where 5 students, one from each of the opposing Strixhaven colleges, puts their knowledge of magic to the test. So Coyle, I know I have not watched the first episode yet. I started watching it, but I have not fully finished. That one came out on April 29th. Episode 2 is going to be out on May 7th, and the final will be on May 13th. So these are coming up later this week. And then next week, from what I've seen, it's pretty funny. Now, you finished the whole episode. What are your thoughts?
Oh, it's super, super funny. you find yourself, rooting for your schools and stuff. And it's really cool to see like, famous people in esports and streamers and comedians coming on and doing this, and they're being trained by, people that I'm following or maybe even are following me on Twitter, which I thought was really cool. To see someone like MTG Nerd Girl get into the spotlight like this is really, really cool. And yeah, it's always entertaining. You could tell they put a lot of work into it, and it's like a game show at the end. So if you like game shows where they're going to ask you quiz questions about Strixhaven, you want to answer along with the people in the video, it can be a lot of fun that way, and I'm really looking for it. I'm not going to do any spoilers or anything. If you want to DM me, you can ask me about my opinion, and I will gladly give it. I gave it to Andy before. I was red in the face the entire time. I was so mad, but that's okay.
Well, if you want to watch these, you can head to youtube.com/Magic the Gathering. The first episode's out, and they are doing these live. So May 7th and then May 13th. Otherwise, you can find them afterwards. And then we do have one more update. We have a new patron, Roxanne Bonifant. Thank you so much for joining the project. Your section is due next week. Please make sure that you cite your sources.
Yes, please and thank you.
Please and thank you. Citing your sources is the worst, but you're the best. And we cannot thank you enough. And thank you everyone who is a supporter of us. If you want to support us, you can head to patreon.com/theguardianproject and donate for any dollar amount. We got lots of fun stuff in there. And also, if you are not yet in our Discord, make sure you join our Discord because it's a really fun place to be.
Yeah, Discord's been kind of blown up lately, getting a lot of people. We've had like 2 or 3 pods going off all at the same time in our casual play channel. So definitely you should stop on by. But if you're looking for another way to support the podcast, whatever platform you are listening to the podcast on now, if you could subscribe, follow, like, rate, star, hit that bell, whatever it is you can do to help us out, we really appreciate it. If you hit that bell icon on YouTube, you're going to get notifications every time that we put up new videos. And if you want to interact in the comment section, we always love hearing your opinions, your quips, your jabs. Tell us when we make bad plays or make mistakes, such as last week when I had a 5-minute rant about my new Cody deck that I wanted to build, and someone simply DM'd me saying, Eldritch Evolution exiles after you cast it.
Coyle, how devastated were you that none of us realized that Eldritch Evolution actually says that it exiles itself? Because I didn't realize that was on the card.
I would have been a lot more devastated had I not had 4 other Cody lists ready to go. But it hurt. Sure. It hurt a little. It really did.
It cut you deep. It cut you deep.
Yeah.
So, Coyle, what are we talking about this week?
This week we are going to talk about some of our favorite X spells, so spells with X in the casting cost. I know we saw like Crackling Power, and we saw Exponential Growth here in Strixhaven, which are some cool new X spells that we have. Those 2, spoiler, didn't make our list, but we're going to talk about our favorite X spells, whether it's in regard to Commander, Standard, Cube, whatever we particularly come up with, and why we like these particular cards.
Yes, and I died to a Crackle with Power the other night. Someone made infinite mana, and it was lovely. And it was an oops, I didn't realize went infinite with the mana. And we said, all right, take us down. So the X was like 50-something. And that was really cool. So, Coyle, I think it is time for us to solve for X. So we're going to talk about our favorite X spells that is from any format. So we are not specifically keeping this just to Commander. And Coyle, why don't you go ahead and kick us off with the first X spell that you would like to talk about?
Yes, this is an X spell that I actually just started using this year, really in a big way, and that's Indomitable Creativity. This is a red sorcery for X red that says destroy X target artifacts and or creatures. For each permanent destroyed this way, its controller reveals cards from the top of his or her library until an artifact or creature card is revealed and exiles that card. Those players put the exiled cards onto the battlefield, then shuffle their libraries. So this particular card, it's used in 1,399 decks, or about 1% of the 260,000 decks that it could go in. With top commanders of Kaikar, Duretti, and Brutaclad. for, being able to destroy all your tokens in order to get a lot of big free stuff. So it's a polymorph card. If you're not familiar with polymorph, it's a 4-mana sorcery. You exile a creature you control, and then you flip until you get a creature, put that onto the battlefield. So Indomitable Creativity, having this X cost in it, is going to allow you to target more than one thing. You can do like a mass polymorph, which is also its own card, but with Indomitable Creativity. I like the creativeness of the artifact part of this. So it doesn't have to be a creature polymorph. You can do an artifact polymorph. And even on top of that, it also acts as a pseudo removal spell. So for 4 mana, you basically get a Chaos Warp, kind of. It's not quite. I mean, Chaos Warp, you only flip off the top. They're going to get something from Indomitable, but... and it does destroy it as well. So it's going to go in the graveyard. It's not going to be able to hit indestructible things, that kind of stuff. But just the way that you can use it as a self-help or a removal spell, that is why I love Indomitable Creativity, and I use it in my Luna deck.
The last time that I saw Indomitable Creativity, it wasn't, I think it was standard at the time, but there used to be a standard deck that would not run any artifacts, and it would only run 2 Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, so that new Ulamog, and it would remove like a token. I believe at the time we had the Shadows over Innistrad block was still in standard, so it would make those clues, and then you would destroy your clue, and you would flip until you hit the Ulamog.
Okay.
And it was essentially a combo deck in standard, which that I had a really fun time playing. But every time I see your Aluna Apex of Wishes deck, I always go, okay, when's the Indomitable Creativity coming? Because almost every time you do it, you've got even if you only do it with like 3 tokens, you usually hit.
There's going to be
most of your stuff is decent.
Yeah. No, 3 is a big threat. If you go, I think there's only like 14 targets total in the deck. So if you can get to 14, you'll win the game because you'll get your win con on board.
I mean, I've seen you also, you had Indomitable and you were like, there's not, I don't have any more permanents.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember that one time you said, I need to be able to shuffle this in somehow. And I think you had a way to, and I don't remember what it was, but you said, I guess I'm done. So Indomitable Creativity, I think, is a really fun card because you can build it as a unique combo deck if you wanted. And you know me, I guess I'm on this platform here where I am the combo player. It's been my thing. I really like this deck. I do think that it's a very niche card, so I don't think it belongs in every deck. I'm really not surprised that it's only in about 1,400 decks.
Yeah, because you don't always want to be killing your commander and getting a rock out of it or something like that. You have to build it.
Exactly. Now, if you're playing Duretti, you would like to upgrade your rock.
Oh, yeah.
So those top 3 commanders are really cool. I really like the idea of this card in Brutaclad. Even Atla Palani is really cool. The newest commanders actually that are showing Indomitable Creativity is a Togo and Kezkit, the Flesh Sculptor. So I assume you're getting rid of the rocks that you make just by playing lands and getting bigger, cool creatures or bigger artifacts. So that seems really interesting for that deck as well. I like this card, Coyle.
I do too. And I play it in, I think, 2 different decks. I think Scorpion God and I probably play it in Zerzoth too. I don't know what's in my Zerzoth deck, and that's the chaos. So it's probably in there.
Exactly. So my first card is Primal Mite. So Primal Mite is a green sorcery. It costs 1 green and X. And it says target creature you control gets +X until end of turn. Then it fights up to 1 target creature you control. So I've been on a kick of playing more fight spells in Commander. And it might be related to the fact that I'm playing a Finn the Fangbearer deck now, where it's just Death Touch stuff. And Primal Mite's really great when you can give your creature even like +3/+3, and it already has Death Touch. So if you need to get rid of something that, even if you want to just pay 1 into the X, right? And you're like, I guess my thing's a 2/2 and it's going to die, but it can get rid of something that you know your opponent's not going to block with, but you need it off the board. This is great. I don't see fight cards as often as I honestly, I think I'm seeing them more, and maybe it's just because I'm the one playing them, because I was playing fight spells when I played the Godzilla deck. So the Zalortha Strength Incarnate deck was really great for fight spells. Finn's great. The top commander here obviously is Neath of the Dire Hunt. So that's the human warrior, the Gruul commander that says at the beginning of combat on your turn, you can pay 2 in a split Gruul, so red or green. And if you do, double target creature's power till end of turn, and that creature must be blocked. So you're forcing people to block it, right? Is kind of like a fight commander. So I really like this card. It's played in 1,867 decks, which is around 1% of the 133,000 it could be played in. So it's not that expensive. The card's like 20 cents.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for a fight spell, it's pretty great and it scales. If you draw it early, you have the mana. If you draw it late, you can make something huge.
Yeah. I mean, and I know you said you only, you can only pay 1 into the X. You can pay 0 into the X, and it's just a 1 mana fight spell as well.
I guess you can do that.
And I know you are playing a lot of fight spells in your Tolsimir deck for a while as well. And you might have even, I don't remember if you were playing fight spells in Hepatra, but that's definitely a deck that probably could use it too because of all the Death Touch snakes.
I was not playing it in Hepatra. I did have Tolsimir friend to wolves, and so that was my wolf tribal. That was actually my fight deck, which was fun to play a green-white fight deck. But I guess this card is also used, most in Ronus the Indomitable, Jared Carthelion, and then a lot of these decks, I didn't always write it down. A lot of the decks here obviously have Zaxara the Exemplary. So if we chose a black, a green, or a blue spell, it might already be listed here just because Zaxara is a very good commander for just playing X spells.
Yeah, especially with the clarified rules revision of doubling tokens. There was a ruling on creating 0/0 tokens, that if you were to create a 0/0 token that enters with counters and you were to create 2 of them, one of them would enter with counters and one of them didn't because you're only doubling the token. But after there's some clarification, you're actually doubling the ability that makes the token. So both of them will get the counters and everything. So Zaxara, even better. I hope people are building Zaxara more after that. I think it wasn't an unpopular commander, but I'd like to see more of it. I think it's a very unique and fun commander, and X spells are always fun.
Well, it's ranked number 43 out of all commanders on EDH Rec. There's 2,300 of them. So I assume there are quite a few Zaxara decks. We just don't see a ton of them in our play group.
Those
although
my
husband...
Got to get those numbers up.
Rookie numbers. What is your next card?
The next card I have is not commander related necessarily, but this is Bright Flame. So Bright Flame is an X red white sorcery with keyword Radiance, which is from the original Guilds of Ravnica block. So am I reading this symbol correctly?
It is from Ravnica, City of Guilds.
Yes. So Bright Flame deals X damage to target creature and each other creature that shares a color with it. You gain life equal to the damage dealt this way. So I first came across this card in Andy's Ravnica Cube when I was drafting Boros, and this card was nuts in draft. And I ended up building a Firesong and Sunspeaker $50 budget deck, and I'm like, I got to check out and see how expensive that Bright Flame card is. You could pick it up for 29 cents on TCG Player right now. Threw that in my Firesong and Sunspeaker deck. Any card that both deals damage and gains life in Firesong and Sunspeaker, that's what I was looking for. Lightning Helix, and then discovering Bright Flame. You can get X to 100 and hit one person's 1/1 red goblin, and it'll hit for 100 on the other 50 red goblins they have. And with Firesong and Sunspeaker, it's going to put you at a ridiculously high life total. And even if there isn't a lot of creatures on there, the second part of Bright Flame is going to give you that life gain that you were looking for anyways, which again in Firesong and Sunspeaker is going to give you a free lightning bolt. So very high synergy in Firesong, but that's not where I discovered it. It was in Cube.
It was from Cube, so it's in 507 decks total, at least for Commander, which is around 0% of the 128,000 decks it could be in. So I have only ever seen this because I put it in my cube, so I wanted to represent at least one card for every single mechanic that has been printed for a Ravnica set. So Radiance, although I don't believe will ever be printed again. I'd have to check the storm scale rating. I remember reading once that Radiance was not really that popular because it does deal it to each other creature that shares a color with it. So you might, if you're playing, I believe the argument was that if you're playing against a deck that's the same color as you, that it hurts you and them, but if you're not, it might only hurt you. That it wasn't really the best mechanic, but I think this is wonderful and cute.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense that they thought about it that way, but in my mind, I go, I'm going to build around and to hit my own creatures first, and then I'll hit my opponent's creatures because I'm going to gain life for each creature that takes damage. For the total amount of damage that you do, you gain that much life. So I don't know. Maybe people are overlooking. It is a 4-mana spell plus an X after that, though. Maybe
it is. And you probably, what do you want the X to be? You probably want the X to be like 3 in like cube, right? 3. The X being 3 is 3 or 2 is probably fine. But in Commander, you really want that X to be like 6 or 7, right? Maybe 4. You could probably be fine with 4.
I think 4 is probably like, if you get it for 4 every time, you're going to have a good time. I'm probably casting this for 2 or 3 a lot of times, though, but in very niche scenarios.
Well, and I guess you can just decide to hit someone else's creatures, right? If you're playing a red-white deck and someone is playing an elf token deck, you just decide to hit each elf for 1, so you can pay 5 mana. And at least you just wipe someone's board, right?
Well, yeah, and you gain 1 life for each elf that you just hit. So
for each elf that you just hit. Bright Flame, great card. If you play Bright Flame, tell us, because it's not in very many decks, and I don't know if many people know this card exists.
Yeah, it's true. If you're one of the 507 decks that is listed on EDA Track.
Exactly. Well, I've got another card here that's actually in less, and this I do play in a Commander deck. That's where I learned of this. I actually didn't know this card existed until I stumbled upon it a couple years ago when I was building my Lavinia deck, although it's really a Nombo with Lavinia Azorius Renegade. But the card is Urtai's Meddling, so it's an instant for 1 blue and then X, and it says when target spell is successfully cast, put X delay counters on it. X cannot be 0. During each upkeep of that spell's caster, the way this is written is so funky, remove a delay counter from the spell. If the spell has no delay counters on it, it resolves. So Urtai's Meddling is not actually suspending a card. It is putting a delay counter on it. And you can think of it as delay if you really want to, or I'm sorry, as suspend, but you're really just making it so that it doesn't happen immediately. And maybe you just need a single turn. And I think the reason I'm drawn to this card is because it functionally acts like a counter spell, but it's not, because I didn't prevent you from having it entirely. I'm just waiting for you. I'm just giving you like another turn or two until I want to see it, because it might be real bad for me. Mm-hmm. But important is it puts the spell onto the stack as a copy of the original. So it's not, you don't remove the delay counter and then cast the spell. You're actually just putting it onto the stack. So the reason why it's a non-bow with Lavinia Azorius Renegade is because Lavinia says whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter it, but you're not actually casting it. You're putting a copy of it onto the stack. But the card is actually only in 457 decks, in 0% of around 277,000 decks. This is easier to cast than Counterspell if you're in 2 colors. Mm-hmm. If you really just want to prevent something for a single turn, right? You can spend 1 blue and then another color if you didn't have blue. That's my argument for saying it's easier to cast than Counterspell. And the top commanders here are Lavinia, Mizzix of the Ismangus, and Zaxara the Exemplary. So Zaxara just happens to get all the X spells listed here. But this is pretty cool in Mizzix if you can reduce the CMC of that X.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I would like to just delay that for the next 12 turns.
Yeah, I've played against a Mizzix deck that was X spells and buyback spells, and that was the whole deck, and it was really, really powerful. So I could definitely see, Urtai's Meddling doing some work there. But I guess there's some extra versatility there If someone does try to counter your own spell, you could target your own spell with Urtai's Meddling and just get it back the next turn. That way it doesn't go in the bin if it's really that important. You could also use
X is 1, and just all right, I'll try for next turn then.
Yeah. You can also use it kind of the same way that the card Delay is used in CEDH, because as we mentioned, these cards don't counter the spell, but they'll just come later. But if you delay someone's counterspell, and then their counterspell goes on the stack at the beginning of their turn, but there's nothing else on the stack, you effectively countered their counterspell. So you could use it like that too.
You absolutely could. So Urtai's Meddling, although I think it's probably one of the lesser known cards, I really like this card. I think it's fun, and it's arguably not a counterspell, but still a counterspell.
Yeah, looking at the rest of the list, I will say that this card is probably the most complicated in rules text.
For sure. For sure.
So let me come to one that is... when you first see this card, I think, at least personally, I was confused when I first read this card. Then again, I started playing Magic very similar when this card was released. So the next card, literally my favorite black sorcery of all time, and that is Torment of Hailfire. Torment of Hailfire is an X black spell. It says repeat the following process X times. Each opponent loses 3 life unless that player sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card. And man, is this thing a house after you cast a Damnation. Woo, baby. I love this
I don't know
card.
how many times I've lost to a Torment of Hailfire, but I would say that this card did shape a lot of the way that you ended up having to change the way that you play with our local play group. Because it was just every single game was Torment of Hailfire after you tutored for Cabal Coffers and Urborg, and we were like, Coyle, can you actually just stop doing that?
Then the next game I cast Exsanguinate, laughed, and then took the deck apart. I was like, I did do the Torment this time.
So the deck you were playing, though, at the time was Sidisi Undead Vizier. So it was tutor.deck.
Yes,
and you were winning with literally only Torment of Hailfire and Exsanguinate. I don't remember any other win cons.
So every once
I just
in a
don't
while,
remember them.
Every once in a while, I would try to win with Torment or Exsanguinate. They would get countered, and then I would have to resort to not Living End. What's the 9-mana? Rise from the Grave?
Rise of the Dark Realms.
Yeah, Rise of the Dark Realms, and just swing with a bunch of giant Shieldrids and Kokusho. It's just giant black legendary creatures, because that was the other part of the deck was Reanimator. So
this card's great. It's in so many decks. It's in 25,000 decks. 9% of the decks that it could be in. That's a lot.
Yeah. When Andy and I were putting these cards together, we had to parse it down a little bit because we both like to talk a lot. And I had Exsanguinate in here too, and we were looking at some of the stats on that. And Exsanguinate has actually played more than Torment of Hailfire. And I think that has to do with the life gain strategy. Torment's going to kill people faster. Exsanguinate's going to gain you life back, and it's why you see Torment of Hailfire is played mostly in, of course, Zexara decks, but then also Nicol Bolas the Ravager. It seems more like a Nicol Bolas theme card in a Nicol Bolas the Ravager deck. I honestly have always looked at Torment of Hailfire as just a big spell black card. I don't think I even ever had it in my Nicol Bolas the Ravager deck.
No, I've played this card. I remember I played this card against you. I don't even remember what deck I was playing, and I had nothing to do, and I'm pretty sure I did X for 2 at one point. And everybody goes, okay, Andy, I sacked 2 tokens. Yeah. I didn't have anything to do, and I knew I was kind of out of the game. But this card is still crazy expensive. It's extremely popular in Commander. It's only been printed twice, Hour of Devastation and then again in Mystery Booster. But it's still around $23 for the Mystery. It's actually more expensive for the Mystery Booster version than the Hour of Devastation version.
Yeah, well, I guess Hour of Devastation, was that low print run, or did people open the crap out of that to try to get the invocations? I can't remember which side of the spectrum that set was opened.
I'm not 100% sure, honestly, there, but you're only paying $2 more for the foil timestamp promo. So if you're looking for a foil, actually, you want to just get the promo over the Mystery Booster, I guess. But this card's great. It does its thing.
And it does it so well.
It does it really well. And if you're not losing to it all the time, I don't mind a good old Torment of Hailfire loss. I really don't.
If you don't mind losing to a giant fireball, you probably shouldn't mind losing to a Torment of Hailfire either. So
yeah, no. This was played against me this past weekend. Actually, I played with Judge Anthony again. So he cast a Torment. I think it was X equals 20. And fortunately, I had enough permanents that I was able to sacrifice them, and then I think I still lost 12 life. I didn't win the game, but it did.
You survived.
I survived. I was playing Gore Muldrax. I was making a bunch of tokens, so I survived a Torment. And if that isn't the truth of surviving a Torment to talk about the Torment, that's the real story, right?
Absolutely. That's how legends are born, Andy.
Now, instead of making you lose to that, how about I just mill you out with a Mind Grind? So Mind Grind, I really like this card. It's a sorcery for blue, black, and then X. It says each opponent reveals cards from the top of his or her library until he or she reveals X land cards, then puts all cards revealed this way into their graveyard. X cannot be 0. So this is in around 3,500 X, 2% of what it could be in of 143,000. So this is not specifically on my list because of Commander. I also am going back to Cube. So this is another Ravnica card. This was printed in Gatecrash. Turns out making blue-black a mill strategy in a Ravnica Cube is pretty good.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact that you went undefeated the night that you drafted the Dimir strategy. The last time we did that, which I feel it's been over a year at this point.
It was over a year ago, for sure.
It was over a year ago. Although it is played in Commander, you will find this card in a Phoenix, God of Deception deck, Mirko Vosk, Mind Drinker, the decks that are in blue-black and are attempting to mill, likely Lazav Dimir Mastermind and Rexiel the Risen Deep. But I just really like this card a lot because sometimes just incremental mill, in Commander at least, can just really wreck someone if they don't have a way to get their cards back. But in my Cube is the reason I'm talking about this, and X equals 6, when you only have a 40 card deck, and maybe you've already drawn 5 or 6 of your lands, could really shut you down.
Oh, for sure. Especially when you cast Glimpse the Unthinkable right before it and have your opponent mill 25% of their starting deck. To begin with, that Dimir mill deck that I drafted that night is better than any modern mill deck that I've ever built. So and I actually have one. I have a Hedron Crab deck, but it's the fact that it's a 40 card format. Mill is so strong. We even saw it in Throne of Eldraine, right? Throne of Eldraine had a mill. You could draft.
That mill deck is still in Standard.
Yeah, so it was a Standard thing. I don't really see people play mill in Commander other than the Persistent Petitioners deck.
Sometimes you see it with Persistent Petitioners, with the new Bruvac of the Grandiloquent. You see that deck occasionally. We've had that on our streams. If you watched or if you've checked out our YouTube videos, you can see Plaid Clad from the Scrap Trawlers joined us and brought a Bruvac deck on a couple of months ago, and that was really cool to see. I don't know if mill is the most popular strategy in Commander. I certainly know that it can be very annoying. And then the one thing that can kind of hose a mill strategy is someone having one of the original Eldrazi, or even it's a card from Dominaria, Gaia's Blessing, I believe. And it says when this card is milled, you shuffle your graveyard back into your library. And I've seen people put that in their decks seriously just to make sure that they don't get milled out. Yeah, so Gaia's Blessing is a sorcery for 1 and a green that says when Gaia's Blessing is put into your graveyard from your library, shuffle your graveyard into your library. So there are some hosers when it comes to mill. But in Cube, it's great, and I wanted to talk about it because I don't think people, at this point, there's not a whole lot of people talking about Mind Grind.
That's right. One quick thing before I move on from Mind Grind, as very important, just to follow up with what you just said. It is important if you're playing a mill strategy that you have instant speed graveyard removal in your deck. You need it. for this exact reason. Yeah. There you go. That's the last thing I want to say about Mind Grind. Okay.
That's it. All right. Step down off of the podium.
All right. And I'm about to step back up on this podium and talk about a white spell. This is a new thing for me, playing some of these spells. The one I'd like to talk about is Heliods Intervention. So this came out in the latest Theros that we had at the beginning of 2020. So Heliods
Beyond Death.
Heliods Intervention is an X white instant speed spell, and it's actually modal, so you have two different options. You choose one. You either destroy X target artifacts and or enchantments, or target player gains twice X life. So Heliods Intervention is played in 12,000 decks, about 7% of the 180 decks. Heliods Suncrowned, the number one, and Liza Shroud of Dusk. It's definitely put in decks mostly for that first instance of destroying X target artifacts and or enchantments, because that's crazy good. I play it in a life gain strategy deck though, because I feel like getting twice X life is pretty big, and it's my deck is a big mana deck. This is my Arden Kodama deck, which focuses on land auras and using Arden's trigger to move land auras from one land to another to make a lot of mana all at once at the beginning of combat. So it's very important that my spells in particular have are instant speed spells. And that's what I really like about Heliods Intervention versus some other artifact and enchantment removal X spells and stuff. The instant is so huge on this card.
Yeah. I like instants way more than sorceries, but I think most people would say the same thing because you can hold your mana up. No, this card is great, and it allows you to hit enchantments. And we've had a lot of discussion in our Discord recently about removing enchantments, and that removing artifacts is usually done in mass, and removing a single artifact, some folks were saying, is usually not that effective. But most of the time, removing a big enchantment is pretty important. Okay, so I hit 3 rocks, or you hit 1 doubling season. Or you hit 5 rocks or 5 treasures, or you hit 1 smothering tithe.
It's amazing. And you get that ability in white typically with these removal spells where you can go for artifact or enchantment.
But now you can just hit all of them. I would like to hit all your treasures and your smothering tithe.
But we did in Strixhaven, we did see a lot of life gain synergy cards that maybe people will start to build with better now that life gain actually has real win conditions other than Felidar Sovereign and Aetherflux Reservoir and stuff. So I know Accomplished Alchemist is the mana dork that taps for mana of X mana of any type, where X is the amount of life that you've gained for the turn, and Blossoming Bog Beast, when it attacks, all of your creatures get +X and trample, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. So being able to do Heliods Intervention at instant speed with a Blossoming Bog Beast trigger on the stack or something, and really be able to hose your opponents might be something that you could consider. There's about 3 or 4 other X spell cards that are instant speed to gain you life. Some of them gain you X life, some of them gain you twice X life. I tend to play all of them in my green-white deck, but this one, being modal, definitely takes the cake for the best X spell in that deck.
Yeah, I don't run this. I'll be honest, I don't run this I don't know if I have this in any deck right now. And I think it might just be because I just don't have a copy of it. But I like this card because it's not just a single single targeted removal. It can be as large as you want it to be. I mean, assuming you have the mana. And that's really what I like about this. I don't have a life gain strategy deck that uses white. I did have a Heliods Sun-crowned deck at one point, but I was more playing a Walking Ballista combo version, so I wasn't running. I think I might have run Heliods Intervention because it was very flavorful, and I needed ways to be able to remove things that would maybe prevent me from being able to activate an activated ability or something, because it was a competitive deck, and I needed to be able to get around cards that were going to be problematic for me. But Heliods Intervention, top tier. I don't see it played very often. It could just be the pods that I'm playing with, and it might just not show up.
We do have one friend that has a Selenia Dark Angel deck
Yes.
That includes an enchantment, and I can't remember what the enchantment's called, that says whenever a player would gain life, they lose that life instead. So if you're playing with that enchantment, you can also use Heliods Intervention as a fireball, a 2x fireball against someone's face, because it does say target player gains twice X life.
Oh, what is that card? I can't think of it either. I know that Selenia deck plays Axis of Mortality, which trades life totals, but I cannot remember. But yeah, no, we should. If you think of it when I do my next card.
Yeah, I'm literally scrolling through Selenia Dark Angel on EDH Rec right now, so I will find it.
Perfect. So my next card, this is actually the card. It's nothing flashy. I just really like this card. I do run this, I think, in every red deck that I run. And this is the card, well, almost every red deck. This is Byforce from Amonkhet. So extremely affordable card. It's $1, which I guess I didn't realize it was up to $1, or maybe it's down to $1. But it's a sorcery for 1 red and X, and it says destroy X target artifacts. Treasures are running rampant in Commander right now. I mean, we've got Smothering Tithe, we have Monologue Tax, Dockside Extortionist, Pitiless Plunderer. So many things are just making treasures. Now, there are obviously important artifacts to remove. Sometimes someone gets a bunch of really early ramp. You know, they play a Mana Crypt, and they play a Talisman, and they play a Mind Stone, and they play whatever it is that they play, and that only for 4 whole mana you can remove all of their ramp that they put on the table when you know it's going to be problematic. I like this card. It can sit there and really it can do nothing, but I can't remember a Commander game in recent days where a single artifact hasn't been played where this would be useful, even just to get rid of something. Maybe it's not being an issue to you, but you can get rid of an artifact that's just been sitting there, helping them out incrementally over time.
Yeah, definitely. And I actually like comparing Byforce to some of the other X spells, even that were in the same standard, like Release the Gremlins. Byforce being just a single X in the cost is super, super effective when comparing to things like Release the Gremlins, which is XX red. You get token creation after that, and actually a new Strixhaven card, you have Pest Infestation. It's in green.
That's XX green, right?
XX green. It does allow you to also hit enchantments with that one, though. But again, it has to be in green now, so you're no longer in red, and it's double X. You're going to be hitting a lot less with it, and you make pests with that one. So if you're not really dedicated on those tokens, Byforce is always a better card than those two, in my opinion. Maybe Pest Infestation to hit enchantments, but then again, it's 3 mana minimum to hit 1 enchantment. So
right.
Yeah, I like Byforce a lot more in situations like this.
I agree. So nothing more here to say. I just think it's neat.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so my next card is a mono green card that you probably see more often than you would like to see, because it really is that good.
And I love it. I love it so much.
It's fantastic. It's also terrifying when it's not in your hand. So this is from War of the Spark Mythic called Finale of Devastation. So for X green, you get a sorcery that says search your library and or graveyard for a creature card with converted mana cost X or less and put it onto the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. If X is 10 or more, creatures you control get +X and gain haste until end of turn. So Finale of Devastation, just doing a quick look back at our list, is the most played card on our list here. So it's in 29,000 decks, 11% of the 260,000 decks that it can go in. But there really isn't a clear winner for like what deck it goes in. It's just a very, very strong green win condition. All you need is 12 mana and you're going to win.
Yeah, I don't think there's a clear winner here. I think if you're running green, at least in Commander, you might be playing this if you have a creature-based deck. I think one of the reasons why we might not see it as often as, I have one copy that I move around, and I wish I had gotten it in foil previously, but the card's $30. Mm-hmm. It's really expensive. Obviously price is subjective, but to get a foil, it's double. It's around $60 to pick up a foil of this card. I think this is, in my opinion, the strongest of the finales. And I use it a lot, but I always want the card to be X equals 10, but it's not always 10. But I hold it in my hand in hopes that I'm going to spend 12 mana on this sucker.
Well, so in my opinion, it's a win con when X is 10. It's just a green sun zenith when otherwise.
Can we also talk about the fact, I know we've talked about this on the show before, but can we talk about the fact that it says search your library and or graveyard?
Yes, I like to emphasize that a lot because when people go, oh, I can't grab my Crater Hoof anymore because I cast it last turn and it got killed. If it's in your graveyard, grab it. Grab it from your graveyard.
So I think one of my favorite plays, and this may have been with you a couple of weeks ago, so I run Finale of Devastation in my Gore Muldrak Amphenologist deck. That's where it's living right now. And I had overloaded a Cyclonic Rift to stay alive, and then I Finale of Devastation to grab back a Eternal Witness, and I played the Eternal Witness to bring back the Cyclonic Rift.
Oh, gross. That's disgusting, Andy.
It was disgusting, but I won the game with two overloaded Cyclonic Rifts.
Yeah. I mean, that should do. If you overload Cyclonic Rift twice, I think you should win because you get around
I did that this weekend too, and then I lost. So
fair.
You win some, you also feel bad losing some.
Yeah.
Because you made the game, by you I mean me, made the game go way longer than it needed to still just lose because you couldn't find any pieces.
Right. Now,
yeah.
For this card, I do think there's a few things that we should point out. As compared to Green Sun Zenith can only grab green creatures, where Finale of Devastation can grab a creature of any color. And if you think that Craterhoof Behemoth is your only target for this, you're incorrect. It's just literally anything that'll give your creatures trample is probably going to win you the game. So might I recommend a Brawn or a Pathbreaker Ibex that you can run in your deck instead of a Craterhoof. Maybe you want to spend $30 on your Finale of Devastation instead of $60 on a Craterhoof, and then you can go buy a Pathbreaker Ibex for $2 or whatever it's going for now as your win condition. So you don't need Craterhoof or Finale of Devastation to be good. No. So make sure you don't do that.
This card also is one of the more, when you think of a certain card, sometimes it brings back a specific memory. And I remember one time we were playing on stream again, this was a few months ago with Chris from CNC Power Hour. Mm-hmm. And it was at the end, I was again playing that Gore Muldrak Amphenologist deck. And we were trying to figure out whether or not the ruling for Finale of Devastation, bring out an Avenger of Zendikar, worked the way it did. And it doesn't. You don't get the tokens and then give everything the +X+X. But I realized Chris didn't have any flyers and his life was like 10. Yeah. It was under 10. Yeah. So instead, I Finale of Devastation for a Birds of Paradise and it got +10/+10 in haste. And we won with the birds.
That's not the only time I've seen a bird kill someone too. I've seen people mutate on top of Birds of Paradise and get in for some good kills too. It's always fun to kill someone with a quick bop, as they say.
A quick bop. So I like Finale. This is a great card for this list. And the last card here that I want to talk about today is actually a card that surprisingly has some high numbers, but I think there might be a reason to that. So the card is Gaze of Granite. So it is a sorcery for black, green, and X. So it says destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost X or less. So I think the reason why we see so much of this card, so it's in around 8,000 decks, 6% of the decks it could be played in, which is around 132,000. I think the reason we see this is because it was printed so many times in commander decks. So I think when people load those new commander decks that they built to maybe Architect or Moxfield or wherever they're loading them, that it might be counting a lot more of them, because this was in Commander 18, Commander 20, and Commander 2021. So it's been in 3 commander decks originally printed in Dragon's Maze. This card reminds me a lot of the new card Culling Ritual. So Culling Ritual can destroy non-land permanents with mana value 2 or less, but then you also get to ramp. This doesn't ramp, but it can scale. If you're looking at the card for their face value of the costs, Gaze of Granite for X equals 1, so the total cost being 4, isn't the same as Culling Ritual, but it can scale. And I do like this card because you can remove everything from the board. If you're playing like a Reanimator deck, okay, I'll take out all my creatures. It's not a big deal because I'm going to bring them back later. What are your thoughts on Gaze of Granite? Because I don't think have you ever run Gaze of Granite in a deck?
I have never run Gaze of Granite. I would personally, if I was looking to add a card like Gaze of Granite to a deck, I would probably go more towards the Pernicious Deed side, black-green enchantment where you can pay X and sacrifice Pernicious Deed to destroy all non-land permanents with X or less. It's targetable. It'll be on the board. If someone has a Crozan Grip or something, there's not going to be anything you can do about it. But I think those particular situations are rare enough where I would continue to use Pernicious Deed over Gaze of Granite. However, if I'm playing Cody where I can't play permanents when Cody's on the battlefield, then I will have to play a Gaze of Granite if I want this type of effect, or a Culling Ritual.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting thought there. I did not think about certain cards that maybe Cody would want over others. Obviously, the top commanders here, flavor-wise, Sisters of Stone Death. Obviously, it's a Gorgon, so that's really fun and flavorful. Is their gaze to turn everything into stone and take them out. But following that up, just percentage-wise of how often you see it, you've got it in Otrimi decks, but again, that might be because it was printed in that actual commander deck last year. Lord Windgrace, Zaxara, these are commanders from commander decks. But then Gerard Golgari Lichlord, Izoni, and Griswold the Dreadsower. So some of these decks can take advantage of it more than others, especially if you're trying to take out a bunch of tokens. Maybe you've got some aristocrat strategy going on, and all these triggers are going to go on the stack. I just like the ability because you can late game, if you just have a ton of mana, you can just let's reset right now. I know that not everybody wants to do a reset, and that's also been some of the discussions we've been seeing is to get to the late game, you need to kind of wipe the board once or twice to get to the late game now. People feel that the game is going on, I guess, speeding up and not going on as long. So that might be a reason that folks aren't playing Gaze of Granite, because you do have to really wait until, I guess, at the earliest turn 3 for maybe an X equals 1. But ideally, you're probably not playing this till turn 4, 5, or 6.
Right.
And at that point, it might be too late.
Yeah, I mean, so you're probably going to use this only to remove big target permanents, So
well, if you do that, see, that's the other issue. If you're ramping yourself, you're going to take out your own ramp, unless your stuff is indestructible, of course. So it's a tough card. I just like it a lot. I think the card is maybe a little inflated here, number wise, because of those commander decks, but really interesting card. One that I don't see very often. Well, that brings us to the end of our show, Coyle. Can you believe that? We made it. We made it. We want to thank you all for listening. If you want to contact us, you can find our podcast online at theguardianprojectpodcast.com. You can find our social media on Twitter at GuardianPod, and our gameplay videos at youtube.com/theguardianproject. And you can email us at guardianprojectpod@gmail.com. I'm on Twitter at ATFlory.
And I'm on Twitter at WormCoilEngine. And of course, we want to give a special thanks to our editor and producer, Ryan Nichols. Thank you so much. And he who handles our graphic design, Chris Wolf. Thank you so much. So I don't know why I needed to phrase it that way, but in my head, I needed to phrase it that way. But thank you to the both of you, and to all of you listening. We will talk to you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.